Our story begins during the episode Con Job, where everything takes place massively differently. The vehicons are still there, but yeah, Wheeljack's not getting captured here. But here's why. He's with Sideswipe and Sunstreaker, the twins, the Double Trouble brothers, the Seeker Stoppers, all that good stuff there. And well, I'm just gonna say this. I feel bad for the Viacons altogether. They're not gonna cut it. So what happens in this scene, right? Well, Sunstreaker starts off with a fastball special, grabbing his brother by the waist and straight up throwing him at him. Now keep in mind, I am giving Sideswipe a more of his Bay versus Statics along with his aligned self because it just sounds and just imagines it so much more cooler. So this is where Sideswipe takes out his wrist blades and cuts the first Viacon in half, while the other one tries to shoot Sideswipe in the back, but Sunstreaker, obviously having his brother's back, launches a solar missile at the Viacon, popping him like a balloon. This means Wheeljack is able to take care of the last one by simply just, I guess you could say, slicing its arm off, then its head. So, like in the original, Bumblebee and RC appear, but they're a little shocked as they thought Wheeljack would just be coming with one other person. And Wheeljack's like, yeah, these guys were a little bit last minute. And this is where Sideswipe and Sunstreaker both simply state that they were tracking one of their own Decepticons that unfortunately was making his way towards Earth. And unfortunately, they kind of just got here in this situation. So Wheeljack kind of just picked them up while their ship was damaged. And this was Sunstreaker's like, wait a minute, Bumblebee, is that you? How you been? So Bumblebee pretty much talks to him, and Sunstreaker's like, ooh, yeah. Sorry, man, I forgot you lost your voice and now you're bleeping towards everybody. By the way, how is that going for you? So Bumblebee simply just hits him right in the shoulder, and he's like, yeah, okay, I get it. My bad. I didn't mean to offend you. But again, I'm just saying, it's gotta be very weird for you. So yeah, I'm just saying, I just hope that it's gonna go for you. And then Bumblebee simply punches him again. And then he simply laughs at like, all right. I get it, you're still sensitive about the voice box and everything. But is it just you two here? Could have sworn Wheeljack was talking to Bulkhead, or at least he said he was. And so they bring them to the Autobot base. And in all honesty, I think Sunstreaker and Sideswipe would get their vehicle modes in this episode, as Wheeljack simply isn't really going to stay for that long. And so one of the few interesting parts about this is that this is the actual Wheeljack. No makeshift, no nothing. Meaning Bulkhead has actually a far greater time with his friend than the original. Considering the fact that makeshift actually barely interacted with Bulkhead, as, it was his best friend, unfortunately. Well, it wasn't his best friend, but you guys get what I mean. And so this is where Optimus simply greets them and even welcomes them to Team Prime. However, Wheeljack makes it clear that actually he's not going to stay for very long. He's got some other things to do. He is going to go back into space, but, he just wanted to bring these guys here and see Bulkhead again. And this is where he actually notes that he actually met two other Autobots that might be joining them soon, hopefully. He did tell them that they were on Earth after he talked with Bulkhead, but yeah. And Sideswipe was like, oh yeah, those two, they should be here pretty soon. To which RC was like, oh, more Autobots? I guess that helps here. But again, what Decepticon were you guys hunting? And Sunstreaker says, we were actually hunting this Decepticon known as Quake, one of Megatron's few berserker agents. Super powerful and super destructive. But as they continue to look around, they notice something. And this is where they simply ask, hey, where's Cliff Jumper? And this is where, unfortunately, they do inform them that Cliff Jumper is dead. And this does hit Sideswipe more than it does Sunstreaker. Because keep in mind, he was a part of the ragtag trio of him, Jazz, and, Cliff Jumper. So Sideswipe does mention that Jazz is going to be pissed or upset about it. But this is when they notice the humans. And Sunstreaker's like, oh, you guys have pets. Oh, they're so cute. Do they play fetch? Do they, actually, what do you guys do with them? They're so small. How do they play fetch with like a giant baton or something, right? And this is where the humans actually look at him in, offense and stuff like that. And this is where Raph is like, wait, what? We're not pets. We're their companions. We're their partners. And Sunstreaker pretty much like picks up Raph in like a gentle way. And he's like, I mean, well, technically it's the same thing. Surprised you guys can actually speak, but it is nice to know there is more intelligent life out there in the universe. But again, what do you guys even contribute to the team? I mean, you guys are so small and fragile. You guys probably get into more trouble than what it's worth. To which Miko's like, hey, we don't get into trouble. And this is where Bulkhead looks at her like, yeah, okay, so anyway. And this is where Sunstreaker's like, sure. So what you guys can do? Can you guys, make some irritating noise that can, harm Decepticons? And this is where Bulkhead puts his hand on his shoulders like, all right, Sunstreaker, that's enough. But look, these humans may be fragile. They may not be the strongest of allies, but they certainly have helped them more often than not. And this is where Optimus agrees with Bulkhead and says that Sunstreaker can actually learn a lot from them if he just give it time. To which Sunstreaker's like, yeah, okay, I guess, but, I guess it is what it is. But this is where, the episode kind of does conclude with Wheeljack actually going back to space, telling him he'll be sure to send those other two Autobots their way, hopefully. And this is where we pan over to the Decepticon warship. And, well, Starscream is a little upset, obviously, right? He wasn't able to capture Wheeljack in this episode. By the way, this does mean Makeshift is alive here. So this actually does help. By the way, I also find it interesting how, like, if Soundwave, Starscream, and Megatron on the ship, and Makeshift was there for a while, why didn't he just appear during those other episodes? It would have been nice to having him there, maybe getting more interactions, but I guess he just wasn't used like that. However, this is where, Starscream is pretty much mad that he couldn't capture Wheeljack, and now the Autobots is just super hidden and stuff like that. This is where Starscream pretty much, Soundwave pretty much uses the coordinates, or he pretty much shows that someone's entering their atmosphere. And so when the Decepticon warship goes to meet them, it's another Decepticon ship. And this is where Starscream looks on in absolute amusement, saying, well, it has been a while, hasn't it? I assume you're here to serve your master, Lord Megatron. He's out of commission right now. But you can direct any complaints and questions that you have towards me. And this is where it does pan over to, obviously, Megatron's berserker, and that is Skyquake. With him telling Starscream that, well, I guess for right now, he'll obey him, but don't count on it entirely. Now, let's talk about some of the episodes that really don't change here with Sideswipe and Sunstreaker. Now, the episode Convoy. Actually, this does change significantly. It is a lot more smoother, considering the fact that Sunstreaker and Sideswipe actually add at least 2 more Autobots to the system. Meaning we have Optimus, Bumblebee, Bulkhead, RC, Sideswipe, and Sunstreaker, which is actually a total of 6 Autobots. This actually makes it easier. Plus, with the coordination the brothers have, this makes it 10 times easier against the likes of Mech. However, Sunstreaker does note that humans can honestly be just as cruel as the Decepticons, showing that they are, or at least Sunstreaker is learning that humans can be diverse. They can be effective, if you will, and, well, ultimately cruel at the end. So pretty much everything kind of goes the same for that episode. But let's move on to another one, that being Deus Ex Machina. This episode kind of takes a different, I guess you could say, spin, if you will. The beginning of the episode starts off the same, except Sunstreaker is along with Bulkhead. So when Breakdown shows up, he actually has to fight both of them. Now, he does do the same thing to Bulkhead, because again, it was a very great introduction to see Breakdown just straight up body slam and then straight up toss Bulkhead like a ball. However, Sunstreaker ducks underneath, and then, being the slightly stronger of his brothers, he's actually able to put in some work against Breakdown. However, this is where we actually see the debut of Breakdown's hammer, and he straight up spin smacks him right into the same area that Bulkhead is in, unfortunately totally annihilating the structure this time. And so this is where Breakdown simply states before he leaves, hey, be sure to check in on your old friend. He'll be waiting for you pretty soon. And simply transforms and gets out of there. So this is where Bulkhead looks at Sunstreaker like, what did he mean by that? And this is where Sunstreaker pretty much rubs his head and is like, oh, that means Quake is here. Ugh, I guess they just got a new ally just as much as we came here as well. So this is where Bulkhead pretty much picks up Sunstreaker and stuff like that. And he says, hey, man, don't worry about it. We've dealt with plenty of cons before. Plus, we got the quality advantage. And Sunstreaker does laugh at this because it is a very good joke and speculation really about the Decepticon ranks. And if you think about it, it actually is true. The Decepticon only have a few quality combatant members, while the rest of them are somewhat fodder. Yes, even Starscream as well. So, with that being said, I think the episode does go regularly the same. However, Sunstreaker does comment on the kids' frailty and how they can actually be a nuisance rather than a benefit. And this is where Sideswipe pretty much tells him to calm down, as this does kind of, chip at the other Autobot's shoulder. Now, Sunstreaker doesn't mean any harm towards them, but again, he is noting that the humans are not really meant to be out here on the battlefield. But this is where the rest of the episode plays out. But we do see Bulkhead, Sideswipe, and Sunstreaker actually go for, the Energon Harvester. And this is where everything plays out differently in this episode. Bulkhead does take down, breakdown and knockout, or pretty much use them against each other, right? However, Quake is another different story. He's actually just way more formidable than the two of them combined. This man is literally a tank. So this means that Bulkhead, Sideswipe, and Sunstreaker actually have to work together. However, they actually do something very different, considering they are one of the best tag teams of all time. Sideswipe and Sunstreaker are not only able to get around Quake's weapons because they have, their vehicle modes now, but they're actually able to use tag team moves and pretty much start performing some WWE combos. Cybertronian style, of course. So, yeah, Quake's getting tossed around, slammed, and body slammed at the same time. And this actually proves to be enough to not only overcome their massive, strength and armor difference, but they're able to just toss him around, which is absolutely hilarious. But this episode does take a different turn. You see, with actually 3 of them this time, they're actually able to outmaneuver Starscream, who can't really use the Energon Harvester on all 3 of them, and this means they're able to quickly disarm him and keep the Energon Harvester. This means that not only do they have a decent worth of, or decent, decent supply of Energon, which is in there now, thanks to the fact that it was used on a Viacon and then actually drained a large majority of the Energon crystals there. But this means that the Autobots also have the Energon Harvester, meaning that they can use it for whenever they need it. And so, this episode, honestly, ends on a pretty good note here. Sideswipe and Sunstreaker actually do change something very significant, and that is the Autobots now having a much better Energon supply. To which I do think at the end of it, they would have definitely been able to, harvest the Energon from the system and stuff like that. But this is where we would definitely end off on the episode with the Autobot ship coming into the military base. And Optimus is actually the one to go ahead by himself this time and actually greets them, with him telling the Autobots to come out and identify themselves. However, this is where Optimus hears an old and familiar laugh and simply states, "You don't recognize your old friend?" But this is where the 2 Autobots step out. One being the stealth operator and assassin of the Autobots, Mirage, and he simply tilts himself or bows to Optimus in a knockout-like fashion, telling him it is great to see him again. However, Optimus is also greeted by Warpath, his oldest and one of his closest comrades who has matured over the years. And he actually states to both of these Autobots that they are welcome, more than welcome, to Team Prime. And that's what we're going to leave it off here, you guys. Let me know what you guys think down below. Please comment, like, and subscribe, and share with your friends. This is Legendary Grimlock, and I hope you guys have a blessed day.